This is CBC Vancouver News.
The search is on for a sex offender behind a high-profile abduction in southeastern BC more than a decade ago. He's gone missing in Vancouver, now wanted across Canada. Plus,
rest easy, my sweet boy.
Hundreds gather in Kelowna for the funeral of a teen struck and killed by a vehicle exactly 2 weeks ago. And
Vancouver is very costly, right? So this services help us to, save some of the money.
Helping some of the thousands of new international students to BC manage the rising cost of living. Good evening, I'm Tanya Fletcher. Thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with a search for a high-risk sex offender who's gone missing in Vancouver, now wanted across the country. And his name might be familiar. He was at the center of a high-profile abduction in southeastern BC more than a decade ago. Randall Hopley served a 6-year prison sentence for breaking into a home in Sparwood and abducting a 3-year-old in 2011. He returned the boy unharmed 4 days later. 5 years ago, Vancouver police issued a public warning about Hopley moving to the city, saying he posed a risk of significant harm to young boys. Now he's missing. The VPD says Hopley didn't return to his halfway house this afternoon. The 58-year-old was last seen at 3 p.m. Officers warn he has a history of assault, sexual assault, and property crimes convictions. Hopley is 5'9" and 175 pounds. He has brown hair and hazel-colored eyes. He was last seen wearing a black coat, black pants, and a black hat. Anyone who sees him is urged to call 911 right away. You can always head to cbc.ca/BC for the very latest. To Kelowna, where hundreds of people gathered today for the funeral of a 15-year-old boy. Tristan Seager was hit by a car in the middle of the afternoon exactly 2 weeks ago. RCMP are investigating his death as a homicide and have arrested 2 people. Our Brady Strachan was at this afternoon's memorial service and has our story tonight.
Watching you being born was so surreal. I instantly fell in love with you.
Heartfelt reflection from Jason Seager, honoring the life of his son Tristan, who died tragically at 15.
Rest easy, my sweet boy.
Hundreds came to remember the teen. Friends spoke about his caring nature and vibrant personality.
Although his life may have been short, he lived it with intensity and joy that touched all of our hearts.
Friends and family brought teddy bears and lay flowers. Many wore beanie toques in the style of their fallen friend.
I think we've been doing a lot to keep his memory alive with the toques, with our vigil at Ben Lee, and just kind of keeping his name alive.
Outside, his mother, Paul, spoke about her son's recovery from addiction earlier this year and the joy he brought to every situation.
Way more charming than I ever was, and funnier. He just, I think one of the things I saw when I looked at the pictures on the Facebook community is I don't think there's one where he's not smiling. Like, he just saw the joy in life, and that's
full of
what
life.
We're hoping.
Full of life. And that's how he wanted his friends and family to be, just full of life.
And while the focus on Saturday was on the life Tristan led, there are still questions about the circumstances of his death. Struck at an intersection near Ben Lee Park, a collision the RCMP is investigating as a homicide. Police have arrested 2 suspects, but no charges have been laid.
The cowards that killed my son that day took away my son, but they'll never take away his memory, and that's what today is about. I hope they're watching.
And we want to say that anybody who's watching who has information, please come forward.
For many here, talk of the investigation was put aside in order to celebrate Tristan and remember the relationships he forged with so many. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna.
The latest in the Middle East now, and Prime Minister Justin Trudeau today spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The two leaders agreed on the need for the immediate release of all hostages held in Gaza and also discussed ongoing efforts to get foreign citizens out of Gaza. While Trudeau expressed Canada's support for Israel and its right to defend itself, he also reiterated the importance of making every effort to protect Palestinian civilians. It comes as Israeli forces encircle Gaza City this weekend, and new concerns emerge at the Egyptian border now, where the crossing that had been open closed. As the CBC's Chris Reyes reports, an impasse remains between the U.S. and Arab leaders on whether to push for a ceasefire.
Israel's assault on Gaza intensifying for another day. This video released by Palestine Red Crescent Society, a humanitarian organization affiliated with the Red Cross. The aid group said Israeli airstrikes damaged the emergency entrance of a hospital in Gaza City, injuring 21 people. The IDF has repeatedly said they're targeting any infrastructure being used by Hamas, including hospitals. In Jordan, in a meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Arab leaders called for a humanitarian ceasefire and limits to Israeli military action.
Israel targeting innocent civilians and facilities, medical facilities, paramedics, in addition to trying to force immigration for Palestinians to leave their lands. This cannot be legitimate self-defense.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected calls for a ceasefire, saying that it would only give Hamas an opportunity to regroup. Secretary Blinken reaffirmed U.S. support for Israel's right to self-defense, but underlined limits, urging Israel to take every possible measure to prevent civilian casualties.
Protecting civilians will help prevent Hamas from further exploiting the situation. But most important, it's simply the right and moral thing to do.
Today in Washington, D.C., one of the largest rallies in support of the Palestinian cause. Demonstrations all over the world have echoed the calls for a ceasefire since Israel began its assault on Gaza.
We know that Hamas does not play by either international law or the law of armed conflict. And so really all we could push for is a unilateral pause in fighting. And it seems that's what the world is hoping for.
As desperation deepens with each day, at the Rafah crossing, reports that exit for foreign nationals have been halted just days after the border opened. Canadians were supposed to be allowed through on Sunday. Even for those who have been able to get out, only stories of horror with no end.
I don't think there are enough words in the English dictionary to actually describe what every Gazan is going through right now.
Chris Reyes, CBC News, New York.
As Chris mentioned, globally, crowds rallied in cities around the world today, including here in BC.
We need a ceasefire, and we need the international community to step in and help Israel and the Palestinians to come together.
This was today's rally at the Vancouver Art Gallery. Hundreds gathered to demand a ceasefire in Gaza. It comes nearly a month after the October 7th attack by Hamas. Calls are rising for more humanitarian aid to be allowed to flow through the territory. A similar protest was held in Victoria, as well as 30 other cities across the country. Well, this week we brought you two shocking stories involving Air Canada passengers who use wheelchairs. The airline has admitted it violated Canadian disability regulations. And now, as Renee Filipponi reports, the Transportation Minister has summoned Air Canada officials to Ottawa.
This video shows Air Canada staff struggling to get Ryan LeChance off a flight at Vancouver Airport. Eventually, he is dropped in the aisle. LeChance has cerebral palsy and uses a motorized wheelchair. He typically uses a lift to get out of the seat, but says the crew refused to get it. He says the experience was painful and left him with bruises.
The equipment's available, the processes are available to teach their staff on how to do this all correctly, so just take the time and do it.
LeChance told CBC News his story after hearing about Rodney Hodgins. Also in a wheelchair, he needs help to get off the plane, but there wasn't any, and he had to crawl down the aisle.
I felt humiliated, but I was also angry.
Air Canada has apologized and offered Hodgins $2,000 in credit.
Air Canada could offer me $1 million, but it doesn't make a difference, because if I took that money and nothing happened, then who wins? Nobody.
We are continuously hearing stories like Rodney's and many others that go unreported about the indecent and inhumane moments of trauma.
Advocate Mayan Zinn is calling for laws to protect people with disabilities.
The entire way that people with disabilities are treated in air travel is like we're an inconvenience.
And pandemic staff shortages have made the situation worse.
And it's been difficult for carriers to get back to the number of people that they need in such a short time, while also ensuring that those staff people are properly trained.
One solution is making it possible to take the wheelchairs onto the planes. This technology was unveiled earlier this year, but is not in place yet.
And we eliminate the potential for injury to the passenger and damage to the wheelchair.
In a statement to CBC News, Canada's Transportation Minister Pablo Rodriguez says all Canadians must be treated with dignity and respect, and says he has summoned Air Canada executives to Ottawa to meet. For its part, the airline says it has undertaken reviews into these recent incidents to make changes to avoid events like this happening in the future. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, nearly 300 Rogers Communications employees in Metro Vancouver are set to be locked out come Monday afternoon. It comes after the union issued a strike notice following stalled contract talks. The unionized workers are responsible for cable and internet services. They claim the company is trying to erode their jobs by bringing in more outside contractors. However, Rogers argues its latest offer actually increases union jobs. The union is poised for rotating strikes starting Monday. For now, though, Rogers says customers will not be affected. Many post-secondary students are feeling overwhelming cost of living pressures in BC, and it's particularly stressful for international students. An expo was held in Surrey today to try to alleviate some of the affordability strains facing tens of thousands of new students arriving here. As Janella Hamilton shows us, they were given tools to help them navigate their new home here.
We could go for the RSPs and then ESPs for the children.
From setting up bank accounts to getting pro bono immigration advice, hundreds of international students dropped by CULSA Aid's second annual Winter Expo Saturday, an event designed to make life a little easier for newcomers.
One of their biggest stress factors for international students is, immigration status, schooling, making enough money that they can support their education.
Neha Parmar is an international student from India, completing her MBA at University Canada West in Vancouver. She says she relies on monthly food donations as she is only able to work part-time on her study permit, and most of her paycheck goes toward rent.
We do have pressure of studies to do best with that. We have the pressure of working. We have to do, save some money for our future.
The Expo also equips students with new winter jackets and connects them with crucial services like mental health supports and WorkSafe BC.
They may not even understand what the labor laws are, so what they're actually, what they're entitled to, vacation pay, overtime pay, things like that, where if they're not aware and they're ignorant, people take advantage of that.
Organizers say many international students never voice workplace concerns because they fear it will affect their immigration status, and that's if students can even secure a job. Shashvat Barot says despite having previous work experience, he spent months searching for a job in BC.
We have dropped so many resumes everywhere. We have applied on in there, and we can get a job, and it's really hard for us for now to manage our finances.
Vancouver is very costly, right? So this services help us to, save some of the money.
Parmar says it's not just financial strain either. Moving to a new country far from family can be lonely and overwhelming. But events like this, she says, help her feel supported.
It feels more like family.
CULSA Aid says this year there are more than 700,000 international students in Canada, with those in BC having to pay 4 to 5 times more in tuition compared to domestic students. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Surrey.
A potentially deadly horse disease is rippling through the East Kootenay region. Equine strangles is a bacterial infection in horses. It starts in the sinuses, invading the lymph nodes in the throat, and often causes breathing problems. Veterinarians in the Kootenay say they have treated a handful of infected horses, but several have died. And there is concern the disease will continue to spread in the community because of this particularly virulent strain.
It kind of comes in waves. So if a horse population is naive, meaning that they haven't seen or been exposed to it in the environment in which they live for a while, their immune system will not be prepared to fight the infection.
She recommends vaccinating horses against strangles, and similarly to COVID in humans, being diligent about keeping horses isolated from others. Well, it is the first weekend of November, and that means the clocks fall back as daylight saving time comes to an end. There have long been calls from many to scrap the annual time change, so we hit the streets to find out how you feel about it.
So daylight savings time is back. We're gaining an hour tomorrow morning. That's why I'm out here asking people once and for all, do you want daylight savings time or not? Because right now we're going to gain an hour tomorrow morning.
Oh, tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. I'm glad I could remind you.
Oh, we had it today.
Yeah, tomorrow morning.
Amazing, of course.
You know, in the Yukon, we don't have it.
In BC, they did a poll and 90% of residents don't want daylight savings time. We're just waiting on the U.S. to do the same thing.
Why you gotta wait on the U.S. though? I thought we were our own government.
Yeah, I love daylight savings.
You love daylight savings?
Just change it by a half an hour and you're done. Then both sides don't have to worry about anything.
I've actually never heard of that one. You don't like daylight savings time, sir?
Yeah, no, I do.
You do?
Yeah, I prefer that. I'm against it. I just want to say for the record, I'm against it.
You're against
Same
it?
time, all the time.
Without. 100%.
Without? You don't like it?
No.
You like daylight savings time. Why is that?
I think it's a great trade-off for the summer. It's 6 o'clock. You get on the bike. You still have 3 hours of daytime to go to the beach, to hit the trails.
Why change it? And always we have to remember to change.
Gaining an hour tomorrow morning.
Yes, I know.
So that's kind of nice. You get to sleep in.
Oh, doesn't really matter.
You like having it?
I love it.
Why is that?
Just getting my time back. You know, it's 12 o'clock, but then it's really 1 o'clock, but then it's 12 o'clock. You know, that's how it is.
So if you gain an hour tomorrow, but in the spring you lose an hour.
I don't care.
Okay, thank you.
They should stay on
Stay on it.
I mean, who cares about California? I mean, it's important, all kinds of stuff, but overwhelmingly people are looking at this and just saying, it's time, you know. It affects a lot of us.
So there's arguments for both sides. I think anecdotally today it's been about 50-50. What do you think about daylight savings time? Let us know.
And finally, BC Lions fans are roaring with excitement after the team defeated the Calgary Stampeders in Vancouver.
Push ahead towards the end zone, and he's in. Hat-trick of touchdowns for Vernon Adams Jr.
The Lions would end up winning the CFL Western semifinal with a final score of 41-30 at BC Place today. That win sends them to the Western Conference final next weekend, where they'll face the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, the winner of that going to the Grey Cup. Up next, North Vancouver is officially home to the biggest indoor bike park in BC. We'll take you there after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. BC lost 4,000 jobs last month, but also saw the second highest increase in full-time employment in the country. That has the province's unemployment rate remaining at just over 5%. And according to Statistics Canada, the most job losses were in the education and recreation sectors. One industry that did see substantial growth was construction.
We can see that construction jobs are up 10,200. That's in addition to the 12,600 we saw increase last month. So when you see it month over month, you can start to say that sounds like a trend. And that's not a surprise because, you know, to your question, is there anything that the government is doing deliberately? Gosh, we're deliberately building housing, I'll tell you that.
The October numbers also show job vacancies in this province are shrinking. Well, British Columbia's biggest indoor bike park has officially opened its doors in North Vancouver. It was all imagined, designed, built, and now operated entirely by professional mountain bikers who call the North Shore home. We swung by for the grand opening at Capilano Mall today.
The North Shore Bike Park is the largest indoor park in Western Canada. Bringing a park indoors removes a lot of barriers, but we really wanted to shine the light on as large of an audience as we can to try to build as much of a community as we can, build that community connection and help grow the sport of cycling. I've spent 20 years working as a coach, promoting the sport of cycling to improve our mental, physical, spiritual health, improving our life, making the world better, one bike ride at a time.
And this was a beautiful sunset in White Rock this evening. And as for the weather, the rain will continue off and on through the weekend. I'll time out your 5-day forecast coming up straight ahead. Stay with us.
we're sharing really important information with the public. And I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
And time for a look at the full forecast. We'll see where things stand right now around the region. If you can get past that rain, it's actually quite a nice night out. Here is what we're looking at for our overnight lows. Do keep in mind we're getting close to that freezing mark in many areas of the interior and up north even below zero. So watch for any freezing rain or slushy snow, especially in those elevated mountain passes. Tomorrow, though, we're going to see kind of those passing showers, the rain off and on continue through much of the southern part of the province especially, and some pockets around Prince George as well. And you can see that's what's bringing us the precipitation. So in Vancouver, we'll get those showers once again. The wind is going to pick up as well, and we'll see that move through the Okanagan and into the Kootenays too. Here are the highs for tomorrow. Whereas last weekend, where we were well below seasonal, we are on the other side of that pendulum now. We are several degrees above average for many areas of BC. So certainly that warming trend, that classic low pressure system that's bringing us the moisture, also bringing us those warmer temperatures. But again, it's not a total washout for most areas, kind of off and on those passing showers. And that's what we'll see continue, at least for Metro Vancouver for the next few days. At 13 degrees, a high for tomorrow. That's several degrees above average. And then we'll gradually dry out as the work week heads on, and we'll see the sun start to come out again too. And that is your late news for this Saturday, November 4th. For news anytime, anywhere, you can download the free CBC News app, and you can always find us online. We're at cbc.ca/BC. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night.